Today we'll be talking about the Japanese American incarceration and the impact of World War II on Japanese Americans. The Japanese American incarceration was a forced relocation and incarceration of Americans during World War II. It was a dark chapter in history marked by fear and prejudice. This picture in the background shows one of the incarceration camps. It's very overcrowded. There's so many people. It's a very unhumanizing image to see. The historical significances of the Japanese American incarceration is a cautionary tale about the impacts the government had because it was driven by fear and prejudice. It highlights the importance of upholding civil rights for all minorities and need for awareness against injustice in future. This picture is a good example. Jobs keep moving, a white man's neighborhood. These were people who were citizens with us, who were here in America with us. And it was just, historically, something that we don't shed a lot of light on. On December 7th, 1941, there was an attack on Pearl Harbor. Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, significantly impacting the U.S. military strategy during World War II. In the background, we can kind of see the Pearl Harbor being blown up or a bomb, and there was a lot of smoke and a lot of fire. It killed 2,400 Americans. It destroyed ships and aircrafts, and it forced America to join in World War II because at first we had an isolation policy as we were going to avoid the war and just worried about us. But then after this attack, we were forced to participate in the war. On December 8th, 1941, the U.S. declared war on Japan. It ramped up military production and the workforce. Factories began shifting to war materials, and men and women began to prepare for battle. And this picture right here shows, again, the Pearl Harbor area. It was just a lot of devastation. We felt that there was no other choice than to join the war. The public reaction to this attack evoked a widespread fear and anger amongst Americans, leading to a strong anti-Japanese movement. Many viewed Japanese Americans with suspicion, which contributed to the support of the act being passed. It was a parallel from national security and civil rights. In this sign it says, "I am American." This is something different than segregation of the blacks. When it said white tone your colors on it, it said Americans only, like only people here born in America. The signing of the order on February 19th, 1942, President Franklin Roosevelt signed the Executive Order of 1966, allowing military commanders to designate areas for the relocation of Japanese Americans. On this paper here, this was instructions to all persons of Japanese ancestries living in the following areas. There was notices saying that you had to return to these areas because you were going to go to these camps. It was basically an hysteria of the American people. The effect of Japanese Americans, it was 120,000 Japanese Americans removed from their homes. Many lost their businesses, properties, and were subject to harsh living conditions. In this photo, we see a lot of Japanese Americans basically trying to pack everything they can to be sent to these camps. And this is only a small picture, 120,000. 120,000. The process relocation in early 1942, after following the executive order, Japanese Americans were located to the west coast to these intermittent camps. And in this picture that you can see that these were families. These were husbands and dads and wives and mothers and children as well, being uprooted and just being treated as they were terrorists or not truly Americans. The conditions of these camps, they were poor, they were overcrowded, they limited access to basic necessities, and we can see right here in this picture, can you imagine 120,000 people living in such a small area as this? The economic consequences because of this, families face financial ruin and displacements of assets were often sold, and they confiscated everything during this forced relocation. So, if they were here since the building of the railroad, they think, determined the business, and then all of a sudden, oh, you don't have any rights to that business. We're taking it. You don't have. I'm just taking it. You're gonna have to go to this camp because you may be a terrorist. After the effects, Japanese Americans had a hard time, coming back into society. Many found came back to find their properties damaged or lost, and there was some propaganda portraying them as disloyal. So it's very hard for them to be welcomed back into society after being forced into these camps for years. The efforts there was personal apology, but the United States government in 1988 acknowledged the injustice and then issued a formal apology and offered reparations to surviving people who were in these camps. These actions aim to restore dignity and push against the historical narrative that justifies their incarceration. In this picture here, one of the camps, they have a memorial because in these camps people were dying, people were sick, what I mean? And this wasn't just like, oh, a month or two thing, these were years. In conclusion, the legacy of Japanese American incarceration during World War II serves as a reminder of the consequences of prejudice and wartime hysteria. You know, I don't know. This was just a tough time for Americans. I couldn't imagine being in this time and facing this discrimination, although you did nothing wrong. You know. Well, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. The end.